and thanks for joining. Today we're taking a look at the management pack for MySQL, part of the VMware vRealize True Visibility Suite. Before we jump into some dashboards here, I just want to go over a couple of quick things on the documentation. The first thing I want to point out here is our system requirements. And so this is important since we need to look at what versions we need to use as well as any of the storage engines. Also want to point out this is only on the Enterprise Edition of vRealize Operations. So if we have standard or advanced, we do need to upgrade to the Enterprise Edition in order to use this manager pack. Next thing, we're working with MySQL 5.6 or 5.7, but as long as we have these storage engines, either the InnoDB or MyISOM, we'll be all right there. Or if we're talking on Maria, we need these versions 10, 10.1, or 10.2, but as long as we've got this extra DB storage engine, will be right there. The other thing, if we are using MySQL version earlier than 5.7.7, we do need to install the sys schema. Now that starting at 5.7.7, the sys schema did come automatically installed, but anything prior, we need to install that. If we click on that, we can see here are some of the commands we can run then to get that sys schema installed here. Also looking at the user privileges here, if we want to get these metrics, meaning the MySQL table and database I/O, as well as anything around slave replication, or if we want to get some of these instance metrics, all of these different instance metrics, we do not have these required privileges. So execute for that table and database I/O, replication client privilege on the slave replication, as well as the process privilege for our MySQL instance metrics. I also want to point out the using the manager pack section here as well. We do have a list then of all of the resource kinds and relationships, or I should say a diagram of how that works out. We have that here, so we can see of the parent and child relationships. There also is all of the alerts and metrics out of the box, as well as the dashboards. Since we're going to jump into those in vRealize Operations, we'll skip those for now. Jumping over to vRealize Operations here, we can see we've got our MySQL instance that is already configured at the moment, but we really just need to put in a name, description if you choose, our host information, the database we're connecting to, if we want to change any of the port information that our instance is on, and we need to input our credentials. And these are just as simple as a username and password that we can input there. From there, we can move down to our advanced settings here. We can choose to either use SSL or not. If we do go ahead and set the SSL to true, we do need to have down below here the path to the cert file that needs to be on the system prior to setting up our actual instance here. From there, we can choose, do we want to monitor all the queries here? We can have that true or false. Our number of maximum query resources, we have that set at this point to 25. We can always change that if we wanted, as well as the active queries, meaning how often are they cycled out for the new queries coming in, or really it's how many we have before we cycle new queries in. And then down below is the actual hours there. How long do we want to keep that, the history? Whether or not we want to monitor tables, set to true or false. And we can also choose how we want to order these queries that are coming in. So right now we have just average rows examined, but we could have that by average latency or error count. There's a number of different ways we could choose to order these queries as we bring them in. And then of course the connection timeout, we can set that higher if it's taking a little bit longer to actually connect to our instance, and then whether or not we're going to have auto discovery on. We'll go ahead and jump into some dashboards here to take a look at those. I usually like to start kind of most general to most specific. So first thing I'd like to start on the overview dashboards. Really kind of just shows us, all right, what do we have running here? And we can connect our instance, our database, our queries, tables, table spaces, and then to the virtual machines as well that might be running on. We can see any of our alerts here. If I choose the instance itself, we should just get the alerts on the MySQL instance here. So it looks like we've got some buffer pool weight is maybe experiencing some challenges there. But we can also then see our performance metrics on whichever piece we've chosen. So we can see our connection, deadlocks. If we choose something like the database, we'll then get the alerts will change, as well as the metrics we're looking at as well. So we're looking at I/O here as well now. If we look at and jump to maybe looking at kind of what we're connected to here. If I see our MySQL instance, we can see some KPIs here on our instance, and then we're connecting to that virtual machine that it's running on, and then to the data store as well. We did leave some space here that you can edit these dashboards a bit. If you wanted to add more KPIs here on the instance or on the virtual machine, you could always add more on those as well. If we look at the usage here, I'm going to jump to the usage, and we can check and see what's been going on. It looks like we've got some rows inserted here on our MySQL instance, as well as the database within it. And then we can choose below here, we can choose from our tables. As we look through the various tables, we can then get our usage there if we're inserted or deleted or anything that's been updated as we go through. And the last thing, last dashboard here, we can look at the query analysis for our instance. So right now we are sizing by execution count and coloring by the average latency of that particular query. We could change that, however. We could change that and say, okay, I want to size by the tables created and maybe color by the average rows that have been affected there. But if we choose any one of our queries here within this heat map, we can then get to and see the full query text there as we go through and see the performance metrics as we go on there. So it looks like we've actually been updating or inserting into a specific table here, and we've done that 107 times approximately. So we can see if there's been any sort of errors that have come through, any warnings, our latency, and max latency. Now we could always, if we're looking at things like that might be seeing some sort of a challenge here, we could always jump to that directly as well. If we double click on anything there, it'll bring up that query. We can then check here directly in that query and find out the information as we look through it. If we want to look at the actual operations here of a query, we could certainly look into that, or on our wait times on a specific query. So that's kind of the information there on all of the dashboards. From that point, of course, any of these dashboards can be edited as well to make them a little more custom. So once we've added multiple management packs into our cluster, we can move from a view like this, looking at our VM, data store, and host, to something more like this. We can see that the same virtual machine is still the focal point, but off of the data store, we can now see the 3-par virtual volume and the common provisioning group it's a part of. We can see the SQL Server instance. We can see the databases within that instance, all of the queries, the SQL jobs, and the wait types. We can also see the Cisco Nexus switch, as well as the ports that are on that switch. We can take a look at our F5 Big IP load balancer. We can look at our IIS web server, application pools, websites, applications, and virtual directories. On the left side of our virtual machine, we can see not only the host, but the Cisco UCS blade, the fabric interconnects, and even the chassis itself. Once we have dashboards that can help us with the relationships within our stack, we can start to build out some custom dashboards that can help out with troubleshooting or allow us to be more proactive in our approach. We can correlate our data and use this information to visualize the stack, from applications down through the compute layer, the networking layer, and down into the physical storage we're utilizing.